All right, well, I really appreciate you having me and giving me an opportunity to spread the message about sex trafficking and the way it victimizes vulnerable people in our communities, okay? A quick introduction. My name is Chad Miller. I'm currently employed as a deputy sheriff, and I'm assigned to work with the federal task force that investigates sex trafficking and crimes against children, okay? Quick note, everything I say today is representative of my own experiences and promise to property. I'm not here representing or speaking for any of the organizations I work for. So there. How do we like living in a world of complete liability and CYA? But that's where we're at. So, I really like talking to people face to face. So this has really been an adjustment for me, doing things over video, as it has for all of us, I'm sure. But I don't want this to just be an unknown voice behind PowerPoint slides. So I have a limited amount of slides just to keep track of where we are in the presentation and some videos. But I will spend most of our time just speaking to you, okay? I really want to get the truth out about sex trafficking and the way vulnerable people are exploited, both in person and online, okay? Because what I'm seeing is that online enticement is closely related to bringing vulnerable people into sex trafficking, okay? A predator has equal or even better access to potential victims online than they do in the real world. And they can quickly vet a lot of people online to see who has vulnerabilities they can exploit. So throughout the presentation, you will often hear me refer to sex trafficking and online enticement. This is because they go hand in hand and the predators use many of the same methods, okay? You'll also hear me refer to adolescents and children as well as adults throughout the presentation. And this is because children and adolescents that are sexually exploited online can be higher risk for substance abuse and trafficking as an adult or as adults. So again, it creates a vulnerability. And really many sex trafficking situations begin with some type of online contact or relationship, okay? So to break this cycle, we have to teach children and adolescents how to be safe online and intervene immediately if we see exploitation. So along with investigating these crimes, I'm making it a personal goal to educate as many people as I can on these crimes in an effort to protect children and vulnerable people from victimization. So I want to say a quick thank you to Lisa and Sarah from Tour de Force Speakers. I still spend 45 to 50 hours a week investigating cases, so I don't have as much time as I would like to educate and get the word out, all right? Lisa and Sarah have helped me to improve the way that I spread this message, and especially through a webinar format, since that's kind of new to me. So they also developed a website for me, promisetoproperty.com, to help spread the word, but I'll put that up for you at the end. A quick disclaimer or some housekeeping issues, as they say. Sex trafficking and online exploitation. This is a dark, dirty world to enter, okay? So if you already work in this area in any capacity, then you know this. If you want to work in this area, then you need to know it. So we're only going to scratch the surface in the time that we have today. But even so, there's really no way to talk about the true nature of these crimes without going into that darkness, okay? So that being said, the crimes are sexual in nature. Therefore, some of the topics are going to be sexual in nature, okay? There may be cussing in the presentation, not just for the sake of cussing, unless I slip up, but because in some of the examples, that's just how people talk, okay? So this particular class isn't appropriate for children. That's just a heads up in case you're taking the class at home and you have children around. Also, as with many topics, there's an ever-changing list of words that are appropriate or not appropriate to use. For example, in the sex trafficking online exploitation world, they prefer to use the phrase missing from care versus a runaway when referring to a child. Easier said than done sometimes. Or victim versus survivor. For example, you'll see that I use the female gender to refer to victims and survivors, and male to refer to traffickers and predators. Even though we know that's not every case, statistically it is in most. But what I'm getting at is I try to keep up and I'll do my best. It is never my intention to offend anyone. Sometimes I just do, but we'll keep moving through the material. And as we do, I want to mention that I've had the privilege of working with and learning from some of the best professionals in this area. So I don't profess to be the single most knowledgeable or experienced person, but I am willing to share what I do know if it will help others. That's why I'm here. But that being said, I'll try to give credit throughout the presentation for information or slides that I've gotten from others, okay? And lastly, I don't sensationalize or exaggerate the problem with sex trafficking and online exploitation, okay? I think much of what you see in the news and on social media tends to sensationalize these crimes. My personality is pretty laid back. Therefore, my teaching style is pretty laid back. So what you're going to get here is just the straightforward truth about sex trafficking, online exploitation, and the perpetrators that are trying to coerce and entice and exploit our children and vulnerable adults all day, every day.
My father abused me. I've lived in 4 different foster homes. I don't even know how many men I've been with. I've been doing this since I was 14. And I'm tired. I don't like this. Is this all I'm good for? Do you even care who I am?
Just relax.
So that video does a great job at showing what sex trafficking looks like in thousands of hotels across our country. Okay, even after doing this job as long as I have, that video still evokes an emotional response in me every time I see it. Okay, it covers some of the characteristics that can cause someone to be higher risk for trafficking, like a history of abuse, in and out of foster homes. And I think it also does a good job at capturing the selfishness of sex buyers and how really they have no regard for the person that they're purchasing. Okay, they're only interested in getting what they want. So that's one of the reasons I like to start with that video. Credit again to mtvu.againstarwill.org for creating that video. I think they did a really good job of capturing the feel. So here's my approach to teaching the class. I want the class to feel personal and conversational, kind of like it is when I meet new people. Maybe we're out having dinner, we may or may not be having a couple drinks, and someone asks me, how prevalent is sex trafficking and online exploitation? Like, how much is this really going on? Okay, so kind of like that, just casual and conversational, except sadly no drinks or dinner right now. And one more quick thing before we look at the objectives. As we work through this topic, I'm going to use some case examples to help illustrate some of the points. So I change names, dates, locations. Sometimes I combine a few different cases into one story. I do this to protect the identity and respect the people that have survived these terrible crimes. Okay, so let's take a quick look at our objectives. We're going to cover the fact that traffickers prey on the vulnerable. Okay, and what ties into that is that addiction to stimulants is a major vulnerability for traffickers to exploit, and I see it on a regular basis. Okay, we're going to cover how prevalent is sex trafficking, how do we combat sex trafficking. We're going to go over kind of a sex trafficking myth and look at the fact that sex trafficking really is a crime that can be hidden in plain sight, okay? Then we're going to look at psychostimulants and how they can create a vulnerability, how they're used to gain control. We're also going to touch briefly on the fact that younger people, that can be a vulnerability as well. And then I thought I'd just put a little information in on what we've seen on how COVID has affected sex trafficking and online exploitation, okay? Then we're going to cover how you can preserve evidence as well as some resources, all right? So let's establish from the beginning that traffickers are masters of manipulation, okay? A trafficker's job is much easier if they can find a potential victim that already has a vulnerability, or if they sense a person where they can create a vulnerability, okay? So if we can understand the importance that vulnerability plays in sex trafficking, we can more quickly identify victims or potential victims and have the ability to save some lives from many years of pain, okay? So we're here today to look at the relationship between stimulants and human trafficking. In my experience, the primary relationship is that addiction to stimulants creates the perfect vulnerability for traffickers, okay? I'm going to put up a slide right now, and I'm going to leave it up while I read a passage from a book, okay? There's not a ton of information on the slide, but I'm leaving the slide up because I just want you to be able to focus and concentrate on my words, okay? This is a quote from a book called The 48 Laws of the Game, Pimpology, okay? Written by a guy named Pimpin' Ken, all right? I am not promoting the book. I hate to even give him credit, but it is an insight into the mind of a victimizer, and so we need to learn from that, okay? So when you hear this quote, realize that he refers to our victims as hoes, okay? And also keep in mind that this is how most of the predators view their victims, okay? And this includes how traffickers view the people they want to sell, and how online predators view our children and our adolescents, okay? So the quote from the book begins now. Most hoes have low self-esteem for a reason. A pimp looks for that weakness, and if it isn't on the surface, he brings that motherfucker out of him. It doesn't matter to a pimp what hoes' weaknesses are, so long as they have them. Then he uses those weaknesses to his advantage. Weakness is the best trait a person can find in someone they want to control. If you can't find a weakness, you have to create one. You have to tear someone's ego down to nothing before they will start looking to you for salvation. Then you have a chance to build them back up, showing them that it's your program that takes them from darkness to hope. While you want them to feel good about themselves eventually, you want them to feel that it's because of you. They begin to see you as their champion, their hero, even if the weakness you rescue them from is one you created, okay? I think you can see already how addictions to stimulants can create the vulnerability that a trafficker is looking for. All right, so let's get into this. One of the most asked questions, like I said, is how prevalent is trafficking? How prevalent is online enticement? So one of the best examples I think that I have when people ask me this question is that a typical ad posted online advertising the sale of sex on a website that is commonly known for escort, prostitution, commercial sex type activity, within 15 minutes of that ad going up, it will get 30 to 40 people that have contacted it already saying, hey, when are you available? Do you have time for me? What are your prices? What's on your menu? You know, what all will you do? These types of things, okay? Over a 4-week period or so, that ad would probably easily get at least 400 plus responses. One of the common sites used in the escort, prostitution, trafficking world is Skip the Games, is what it's called. In a medium-sized city in the United States, in one day, you'll probably see over 500 ads posted. Some of those could be like reposts throughout the day, but the point is there's a lot. Okay, there is a lot available out there when it comes to trafficking. So the demand The market is out there, okay, for the sale of sex, of both adults and children or teenagers, okay? Typically, the preference is younger adults, if not teenagers and children. Certainly, again, preference would be younger adults, 18 to 22 years old. And the question for the predator, for the sex buyer, is in what scenario can I do this and not get caught? All right. So I don't want to give the false perception that these guys draw a lot of lines. Typically, they don't. It's really just about how do I avoid getting caught. Okay. So that could be, an escort prostitution type situation where they're meeting up, where they're agreeing ahead of time to pay money for a sex act. It could be a meetup with no money involved. So maybe they're just enticing a younger person, a child or a teenager, to meet up. Maybe they're disguising who they really are. We'll get into that. There's multiple reasons. Or offer of gifts, okay? But not necessarily presented in a prostitution context. So it's not like, hey, I'm going to pay $120 for 30 minutes, and in exchange, I expect this sex act. It could be more, hey, let's meet up, and, I got some gift cards and stuff for you, but, we're just going to hang out. But ultimately, the end goal is to have sex with that person or to make money off of that person, okay? If we're looking at online only, if we're looking at a predator whose intention is not to physically meet up with the child or teenager, then they're looking for explicit sexual photos and videos, where again, they're probably going to use those then to blackmail that person and get more and more explicit videos. So let's talk about how we combat sex trafficking and online enticement, okay, and our online predators, okay? I kind of look at 4 key areas that we want to hit. Number one, we want to identify our victims or survivors of these crimes, and we also want to be able to recognize potential victims of these crimes so we can try to head it off before it happens, okay? So we want to identify them, we want to get them out of that situation, and we want to get them help, okay? We also want to identify and arrest our traffickers or our pimps, right? The people that are exploiting and selling other people and making money. We want to identify our sex buyers, okay, or our online predators, because they're driving the industry, right? If there wasn't such a high demand to pay for sex, there wouldn't be trafficking. And if there wasn't such a high demand, especially for younger people, children and teenagers, then we wouldn't have our kids out there being preyed upon, right? And then fourth, educate people, educate the public. And I feel like that's what I'm doing here. And here's what's really important about this to me, and why I appreciate you taking your time to be here, is hopefully education will prevent victimization, okay? We want to limit the potential targets for predators. So I feel like the more people I can tell, the more parents, grandparents, teachers, aunt, coaches, the more people there are then that are out looking out for our kids and teaching our kids what to look for and how to be safe. So that's just a really key area, okay? We're going to get here to one of the myths about sex trafficking, okay? So based on my experience in this job, sex trafficking and online enticement are most often coercive and fraudulent in nature, okay? A lot of psychological manipulation, a lot of behind the scenes stuff, okay? Hidden in plain sight, all right, is the way that I look at it. So you see a lot of information about sex trafficking being sensationalized in the news and on social media. So I think a lot of times, if people have no exposure or education to sex trafficking and online enticement, what they're usually picturing is scenes from the movie Taken, okay? Which I love that movie, and Liam Neeson. But they're picturing scenes from Taken, and they tend to think that sex trafficking it always involves an abduction or someone slipping a drug into a girl's drink and then yanking her into a creepy white van, all right, when she steps outside. The problem is, if that's what everybody thinks they're looking for, then we're going to completely miss the subtle signs of trafficking that are right in front of our eyes, okay? So when it comes to your kids and teenagers, that subtlety happening right on their phones and computers, okay? It's that screen they're staring at, okay? that is an open door to enticement and recruitment. So that's what I want you to remember is for many kids, for most kids these days, I would say, that is the real world to them. That's what's out there. And that's a doorway right to them, okay? So we're not looking for creepy white vans and beat up girls running down the street with a chain around their foot screaming for help, okay? Now, I'm not saying that these kinds of abductions never happen, okay? But it's a small percentage when compared to the subtle coercing that makes up almost all trafficking and enticement, okay? So remember that most of the time, the trafficking and enticement is a psychological imprisonment. So you're not necessarily going to see it, okay? And both trafficking and enticement often start with a manipulative person pretending to be a boyfriend or a close friend that can be trusted, and that's the lie, okay? The predators are looking for a vulnerable person that they can exploit.
When you work in the service industry, you see a lot of homes in all sorts of areas. Meet a lot of people, and even pets. Out here, you have to take your job seriously and always be on the lookout to find better ways to safeguard the people you serve.
What kind of shop are you guys got going here?
Tool and die shop.
Great, welcome to the neighborhood.
Thanks.
Or the products that protect their homes, or services to get their homes running just right. You work hard every day because you don't want to miss a thing.
Like you just did.
Do I have your attention?
Workers who are in people's homes on a day-to-day basis are a critical part of identifying potential cases of human trafficking and combating this horrific crime. When you know what to look for, you can help bring an end to human trafficking.
As service workers, you play an important role in the detection of human trafficking. You are on the front lines, in homes and in neighborhoods. Now that you know some of the signs to look for, you can help save those who are being victimized. Together, we can make a difference. If you identify someone you think may need help, please contact the National Human Trafficking Resource Center at 888-373-7888. This is a toll-free hotline that's available to answer calls from anywhere in the country, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and all calls are confidential. On behalf of the Michigan State Police, thank you for your help in keeping our community safe.
So let's take a look at some case examples that can help demonstrate how stimulants work as an effective vulnerability for traffickers to exploit, okay? First, I want you to take a look at this video and see just how smooth and psychologically manipulative traffickers can be. This is another great video, and I want to credit 3 Generations.
I have 4 girls and a boy. I have a daughter that's 22. I have a daughter that's 21. I got another daughter that's 18. And I got a son that's 23. And I got another daughter that's 9. I mean, no, she's 11. Jelana, she's 11. A lot of girls, like, they ain't got no place to go. They ain't got no money, they don't have no food, you know what I'm saying? And they ain't got nowhere to go. And then some of them, they gonna tell you, you know, I'm trying to find me somewhere to go. You know what I'm saying? I'll bring them over to the house and give them a little shelter, let them go in the basement and fix them something to eat, and let them take a bath, let them clean themselves up. You know, my girls, they go get girls. You see what I'm saying? Every time I go in the club, they go find girls. And girls also come at me, they try to figure out what is you telling these girls, what is you doing? Because all y'all, when y'all step in the club, you got on suits and y'all looking good. And they see me at the bar when I pull my money out, but when I buy a drink, I buy my girls a drink, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of girls be wondering like, man, you making a nice piece of money, but how is you making all that money? And I'm like, do you really want to find out? Do you really want to get down on this team? You got to test them to make sure that they doing the job right. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I do. I test them out. If she can't make me feel good and better in bed, like how the way she's supposed to go out there and do the Johns on the streets, well then she can't do that, well then she ain't gonna make no money like that. What make a good hoe is that she got to be loyal, she got to be dedicated, she got to be, you know, straight honest. To me, that's what makes a good one. She have to be real honest, you know, no playing games, no lying, and none of that there. Because if anything happened, I got to also put up some bond money too to help her get out of jail. Anything that, you know what I'm saying, anything that happens, you know. So I put something together. I say this is what we're gonna do. You know, we're gonna work and we're gonna get us some money. You know what I'm saying? And they're like, so is you up with it? I say, yeah. I say, is y'all up with it? And they're like, what we got to do? Y'all got to go out there and hustle. I'm doing everything else for y'all. Whatever y'all need, I'm going to help y'all out with it. And they said, yes, we're going to go do it. And they went out there and did it. That they be safe in the streets because they know what they doing when they go out there in them streets. Okay. See, a lot of girls that got ambushed and raped and jumped on out there, they didn't know what they was doing. Mine goes out there and make the little money that they supposed to make, and they be right back at that time because I keep my phone with me. They hit my phone, they have their phone, they call me back. I'm on my way home. I keep them happy by taking them out, buying them anything that they want. You know, plus we all stay together. I also provide a roof over their head and I help them out with anything that they need. You know, I help them out with everything. I sit up, I talk to them. Sometimes I give them foot massages, back massages, you know. They might call it so, but I don't call it that, you know. I just know how to treat a person, that's all. It's because that, you know, I'm not abusive. I sit down and talk to them. I help them out. Their feet might be sore from walking the track all day. I massage their feet, run them some bath water. I even bring them food. I even cook their own food and get to them, you know. And I do a lot of stuff to help them out. It's a lot safer for me to sell women than to sell drugs because I ain't got to worry about nobody kicking my doors in, police trying to raid. I ain't got to worry about nobody shooting at me and trying to rob me. I don't have to worry about them type of things. It's okay because I make a nice piece of money, you know, and I make it all right. They go out there and do all that and they come back and they give it to me. I would be pissed off if I get locked up for something that they did, but I don't see how, because I don't even be out there in the street. You know, I be in the house, but they go out there. But if somebody happens to call and try to tell them something, my girl's gonna deny it. Yes, this is the best job I had here. The best job I had.
So I think that is a pretty coercive sales pitch to draw somebody into sex trafficking. Okay, now consider a potential victim that is addicted to stimulants. They may be homeless, has untreated mental health, and I imagine that pitch may sound pretty good to someone, but that's the trap. okay? So looking at a case example right now, I can say that in many of my cases, I spend as much time working with advocacy agencies to get services for the person that has survived sex trafficking as I do actually investigating the trafficker, okay? In the end, if I'm going to make a case against the trafficker, then I do need to have a crime victim for my report, okay, that can tell the courts what happened if I'm going to make an effective case against the trafficker, okay? But to take a victim-centered approach, I first want to prioritize services for the person that was exploited, okay? And be patient while they work to get their life back. Because in the end, that's the most important thing, all right? In this particular case, the individual that was exploited by a trafficker has a very common background that made them high risk, okay? They grew up in a close-knit rural town and they were sexually abused from about 6 years old to 11 years old, okay? Her mother was aware of the abuse and chose not to believe the child or just pretend that it wasn't happening, okay? Around age 11, she was removed from her home and spent ages 11 to 18 in foster care. So after aging out of foster care, she moved back home with her mother, okay? So her history of sexual abuse that was never properly treated led to further sexual exploitation and addiction to meth going into her adult life, okay? Additionally, there was some mental health issues that were never treated along the way. So this led to one boyfriend after another that really just turned into one pimp after another. And we know that it's common for traffickers to present themselves as the perfect boyfriend that wants to save them and provide for them, but ultimately it is a trap, okay? So over the course of years, this individual had children with some unreliable and abusive men. Now, at one point, she was able to get away from them, got some very helpful services, and for a while was living a stable life for her and the children, okay? Unfortunately, another abusive relationship started and set her back down a path of destruction. So she was eventually able to get away from that abusive boyfriend, but it resulted in a relapse. She began using meth again, okay? So this resulted in a child abuse neglect intake, and this was based on some concerns at one of the kids' schools, and ultimately the kids were removed from her home and placed into foster care, okay, or kinship care. So this sent her further spiraling downward. Increased meth use resulted in a dating relationship with yet another pimp, okay? And this pimp really exploited the stimulant addiction and used it against her right from the start by threatening her that he would let CPS know that she was still using meth, that she was engaging in prostitution if she didn't continue to work for him. So his threat was, you'll never get your kids back if CPS finds out that you're engaging in prostitution, okay? Now, additionally, this pimp would not only provide meth to keep his girls working, he would charge them for it and then also use them to pick up and deliver quantities of meth. So just like the guy mentioned in the Pimping 101 video, he sends the girls out to do the work so he can distance himself from the crime, okay, and try to insulate himself from getting arrested, okay? So this is basically the point in time where the case came across my desk and I got involved, okay? Now, out of respect for her privacy, I've kept things somewhat vague, and I don't want to go into where things are currently at with the case, but I think that serves as a very common example of how stimulants create a dangerous vulnerability, okay, that traffickers will exploit, okay? And just some additional information, one of her concerns was that the courts only wanted to treat her substance abuse and not her mental health. So it took a lot of work to get services that would address both issues at the same time. This next case is one from a few years back, but this is an example of a predator introducing meth to someone that had never tried meth before and then using it to exploit them, okay? So this is what we were talking about previously about creating that vulnerability, all right? So in this situation, we have a 19-year-old female with a history of mental health concerns, with some suicide attempts, that was exploited by a man about 30 years older than her that had known her since she was in grade school. Okay, so that's not creepy at all, right? In this particular situation, his end goal was not to sell her to other men. It was to have her basically as his own live-in sex slave, okay? So the methods he used to control her are very common. So first he started noticing on social media that she seemed sad and depressed. He reached out to her and suggested they hang out, okay? But she wasn't interested, all right? Really what she told me was she just thought it was pretty creepy that this man way older than her that's known her since grade school wanted to hang out, okay? So he continued to communicate with her, flatter her by telling her, you know, you're too beautiful to be so sad. Eventually, he offered her $500 cash to hang out, okay? She was working, but she wasn't making a lot of money. The money was enough to convince her, so reluctantly, she let him pick her up, okay? Now, keep in mind, again, this girl had never tried meth. She had never engaged in prostitution. And over the course of the following week, he introduced her to meth, continued to give her money and buy her things, and sexually assaulted her, okay? So gradually this turned into a situation where she moved into an apartment that he provided, and he would provide meth and cash in the range of $500 to $1,000 per week in exchange for a certain amount of sexual acts per week, okay? So this is a crime that we call pandering. It's very closely related to sex trafficking charges, but just slightly different. So with pandering, we have to prove that someone received or gave or agreed to receive or give some money or something of value, like stimulants, to procure someone to commit an act of prostitution, okay? So in this case, he coerced her into having sex in exchange for money and drugs. This is not something that she would normally do. So in this situation, we were able to get this young lady out. We got her help. Her and her mother stay in contact with me, and she's doing very well. The man that exploited her, he was charged with distribution of meth and pandering and went to prison, okay? As a side note, exploitation of vulnerability is the same method I see when I work sex trafficking investigations overseas, okay? So I do that work with a nonprofit, non-government organization. So my role over there isn't law enforcement. It's entirely undercover work, getting covert video and doing reports. So overseas, I don't as much see the use of drug addiction. It's primarily exploitation of poverty is what I see in their sex trafficking area, okay? But it's the same coercive methods. Now, on the flip side, I have a friend that works with aftercare houses in different areas just over the Mexican border, okay? Areas with a heavy cartel presence. The use of meth to control girls for prostitution is heavy, and what he frequently sees is that the girls working in prostitution get behind on the payments for their drugs, and they're often executed, okay, as a message to the other girls, and just discarded. So he's lost a couple girls in their program that way, so heartbreaking. And then I just want to add this information to a young market. Another vulnerability is finding young girls, okay? They're often less experienced and easier to manipulate. And if we look at this slide real quick, you can also see that the demand is for younger women, teenagers and adolescents as well. So notice that the ads don't blatantly advertise that a girl may be a minor, okay? But they typically use ages between 18 to 21 to advertise minors and underage people, okay? They'll also use phrases, as you see here, like just turned 18, fresh meat, virgin. And then notice in the clips from the ads, they use terms like daddy's girl, sweet high school girl, or extra small, extra tight, things like that. Okay. So what can we take away from this? If you interact with people that are addicted to stimulants, educate them about the potential for them to be exploited and look for signs of exploitation. Okay. If you see something, trust your judgment. Okay. Don't ignore it. Here in a little bit, I'll briefly discuss what type of evidence to preserve for law enforcement if you suspect that someone's being exploited and possibly being lured into sex trafficking. I'd really like to dive into what signs to look for specifically, but just due to time constraints, that would be something I'd have to cover in depth another time. However, I'm also going to provide you some resources, all right, where you can go online and get more information on what signs to look for. So given the influence that COVID has had on our world, I thought I would add a little information on the effect COVID has had on vulnerability and the commercial sex industry, okay? So I want to thank HTI Labs for gathering this information, and one of my good friends, Anna, for passing this information along to me, okay? So if you look at this first slide, you'll see that sex provider and sex buyer discussion threads on online forums indicate that there has been an increase in online sex work, okay? So strip clubs are being shut down. Notice in this example that the person posting said her and a friend started making porn since the strip club is no longer operating, okay? It also points out that not only individuals that were already in sex work, but individuals that lost their jobs turn to sites like onlyfans.com to sell sexual photos and videos. And if we look at this next slide, this is referring to sex buyers. You'll see with the decrease in business travel and increase in financial troubles, the selection of clientele has decreased, causing sex workers to pursue other ways to generate income. Again, specifically online sexual experiences, okay? And note that the sex buyer in this clip is complaining that they will have to start actually dating again since they can't afford to pay for sex regularly. Here we see that there was a large decrease in the amount of advertisements for Asian massage parlors due to the mandated closures of massage parlors. And keep in mind, this references Asian massage parlors that advertise on commercial sex websites. This next slide here shows us that throughout the spring of 2020, the number of adult search ads with an OnlyFans link increased nearly 90%. So if you're not familiar with onlyfans.com, this is an adult platform where sex buyers pay for subscriptions to access a provider's pictures and videos, okay? And sadly, we have high school girls that have gotten wind of this. So they'll open OnlyFans accounts and put naked photos and videos of themselves up there, really failing to realize that these are now out there forever and can be, and probably likely will be, used to exploit them for something else in the future, okay? In addition to, is that all this activity, as more of it moves to online sexual activity, it creates an even larger online playground for traffickers to make contact with people that are in desperate situations, okay, and attempt to exploit them. Another thing we've had is more kids at home online. So for our task force, this has resulted in 10 recent cases of adult men pursuing girls online from ages 12 to 15, okay, and making arrangements to meet and pay for sex, okay? And one of them was a teacher and a girls swim coach. I'm going to put a slide up with some resources, and I'm going to leave that up for a little while, okay? It's got contact information for National Center of Missing and Exploited Children, also for the FBI Crimes Against Children online predator site, Promise to Property, okay? We've got a ton of information up on Promise to Property, a ton of links. You can contact us by email, you can contact us by phone, anything that we can do to help, okay? And then also the number for the National Human Trafficking Hotline, okay? I can't stress enough, visit these sites, all right? I can't cover all of my experiences, everything that National Center has. It would just take multiple sessions. Really, this class that I put together is just kind of a basic, right, like tip of the iceberg of what's going on here, okay? But I can tell you that my experience investigating these crimes confirms that the information you see on National Center and on FBI site is based on real life circumstances, okay? This is the way that it's really happening. So really educate yourself, learn more from it, okay? Let's talk real quick about who do you notify, all right, if you think that a child or a vulnerable adult or somebody is being trafficked or being enticed or exploited online, okay? First, 911, all right, call the police and make a report, okay? If it's dealing with a child, you can and also will want to contact your local child abuse neglect hotline and make a report. That'll also get routed to law enforcement. You have the hotline for National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Now let's talk about what kind of evidence that you want to keep for law enforcement, okay? So let's say that your own child or a child that you care for or a child of a friend or whatever the circumstance may be that you suspect that this is going on, okay? Keep the phone, tablet, computer, whatever it is that they were using to communicate with this person, keep it powered on. Go ahead and get all logins and passwords to the devices, to all the child's accounts, social media accounts, email accounts, everything. Get their social media usernames or vanity names. And, you know, assure the child that they're not in trouble with the police, okay? Maybe even that they're not in trouble with you. I mean, we want to use it as an opportunity to teach, and on down the line, you as a guardian parent, do what you decide to do. But the main thing we want to get at the beginning is we want the child to be open and to report everything to us. And 100% want them to know they are not in trouble with the police. The police are here to help, okay? The police are here to help find the person that was taking advantage of you. Okay, and lastly, how can you help? So as a parent, a foster parent, grandparent, aunt, uncle, guardian, teacher, or any other role where you have involvement in the life of a child or a vulnerable adult, use the information you learned today to protect them, okay? After today, you know what to look for, you know who is high risk, you know who to contact, you know what evidence to preserve, and you have additional resources available to you to learn even more. So I would say trust yourself, okay? Trust your instincts, trust your judgment. If you see something that doesn't look right, pursue it, okay? You may have the opportunity to save a child, an adolescent, or a vulnerable adult from many years of pain and exploitation, okay? Here's all the contact information for Promise to Property. I'll leave that up for a bit if you want to write it down. Please reach out if there's any way that we can help, okay? At this point, the class is concluded if you need to go. I'm going to stick around for a while to answer any questions that you might have. Just want to make sure people feel like they got what they came for and you feel confident that you understand what you're looking for. So once again, I really appreciate you taking the time to learn about sex trafficking and online exploitation.